The Hong Kong Threshold, a Frank Murray investigation. Season 3, Episode 5. Hong Kong does not prepare you for Hong Kong. You can read about it, watch it on a screen, hear people who have been there describe the way the light works on Victoria Harbour at dusk, and none of it lands until you are actually standing in it. 44 floors above the waterfront in a hotel room that smells of cedar and air conditioning, watching a city that seems to have been built in layers by people who ran out of horizontal space and decided the only direction left was up. I had been awake for 22 hours when we checked in. The flight from Manila had been 4 hours and 40 minutes of me reading the Endgame Directive files on a tablet with the brightness turned low so Sarah could sleep, and what I had read in those files had the effect that truly bad information always has on me. Not panic, not despair, but a particular cold clarity that settles in somewhere behind the sternum and stays there until the case is closed. The Endgame Directive. Constance, had said those 2 words in Manila like they were a detonator, and Isabel Reyes of the NBI had confirmed what Ye was pointing at, a protocol buried in the Chrysalis operational architecture that activated when the network detected coordinated law enforcement pressure across multiple jurisdictions. Not a shutdown protocol, not an escape protocol, a no recoverable evidence protocol, which meant exactly what it sounded like. Before I go any further, if you like these stories as much as I like telling them, please hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment below. YouTube needs to know you're out there. It really does help me out. And now, back to the part where someone's trying to kill us. Subjects currently enrolled in active Chrysalis facilities would not be witnesses if the directive was fully executed. Facilities would not be laboratories. Documentation would not be documentation. The people inside the program, the ones Pemberton's network had recruited with false consent forms and financial compensation, and the language of legitimate research, would become a cleanup problem. I had not shared the full implications with Sarah until we were off the Manila flight. She had been quiet for a long time afterward. Not the quiet of someone who didn't understand. The quiet of someone who understood completely and was deciding what to do with that understanding. North of here, she said finally, meaning somewhere in the Chrysalis network we hadn't dismantled yet. Whoever is holding the directive key is north of here. Hong Kong, I said. She had nodded once. Slowly. Hong Kong. Miles had found the thread 4 days before we landed. It started, as Miles's threads usually did, with a financial transaction that didn't quite fit, a payment routed through a shell company in the British Virgin Islands into a property management firm registered in the New Territories, the mainland-adjacent part of Hong Kong. The property management firm had 2 tenants, a trading company that did not appear to trade anything, and a biopharmaceutical consultancy called Lantau Bioventures. Lantau Bioventures had no website, no public filings beyond the minimum required by Hong Kong company law, and a single-name director, a man called Dr. Raymond Chou. Dr. Chou is interesting. Miles had told me on a call from Culver City. His keyboard going in the background, the particular percussive rhythm that meant he had been awake too long and was running on the kind of concentrated focus that only manifests when the stakes are high enough. He's 61 years old. Trained at HKU and Johns Hopkins, published work in genetic regulation that is cited by 3 of the research papers we pulled from the Tanaka Biosciences documentation. He is not a true believer in the Pemberton mold, not financially desperate in the way Hiroshi Tanaka was, not coerced in any obvious way. He paused. As near as I can determine, he is a man who believes in what Chrysalis is trying to accomplish at the scientific level. A true believer in the worst sense. That's harder, I said. Considerably, Miles agreed. True believers don't fold when the NPA walks in. They don't keep 11 months of records as insurance against the people who own them. They believe. He paused again. But here's what makes Dr. Chou particularly critical to your next 3 days. The Endgame Directive, based on the operational structure I've reconstructed from everything Tanaka, Osei, and the Manila documents gave us, requires a cryptographic authorization from a regional scientific coordinator. Someone was standing inside the research hierarchy of Chrysalis, not just a financial or logistics side. Dr. Chou is a key, I said. Dr. Chou is one of the keys. Miles said, there's a 2-party authorization structure. The other party is Pemberton himself. But Pemberton is in custody, and his digital access has been severed by the Korean and Japanese teams. Frank, if Chou activates his half of the authorization, if he sends a signal believing Pemberton can't be held, whatever the directive does, it starts. How close is Chou to activating? Unknown, Miles said, which is the problem. Torres called while I was standing at the hotel window watching Victoria Harbour go dark. Hong Kong, he said, the way he always said the name of the city we just arrived in. Not a greeting, but an acknowledgement of the distance we'd traveled from the place where the case had started. Hong Kong, I confirmed. The situation with Pemberton is stable for the moment, he said. Japanese extradition paperwork is through its second review. Korean prosecutors are filing consolidated charges this week. Singapore has completed its inventory of the Pacific Meridian, and the evidence package is with the U.S. Attorney's Office. He paused with the particular weight of someone who is about to deliver the qualification. But the direct concern is real. The interagency assessment that came back this morning confirms what Miles flagged. The authorization structure is live. It hasn't been deactivated because no one in the network with authority to deactivate it has cooperated to that depth. They all cooperated on facility documentation, I said. Survivor testimony, financial records, operational communications. But not on this. The directive is different, Torres said. It's compartmentalized even within the network. Most of the cooperating witnesses didn't know it existed. Tanaka didn't know. Ose didn't know. The people who know about it are the people at the top of the scientific hierarchy and the people Pemberton trusted most. A pause. Dr. Raymond Chou. We need him before he decides to use it, I said. You need him, Torres said, with a careful precision of a man distinguishing between what the Secret Service could officially do and what Frank Murray could do without paperwork. I have a contact at the Hong Kong police force, Inspector Vivian Lowe, Commercial Crime Bureau, but she's been briefed on the Chrysalis thread. She's aware that something significant is moving through the territory, but she doesn't yet have the domestic predicate to act on Chou directly. Send me her number. I said, already sent. Torres said, Frank. Lowe is sharp, but the political situation in Hong Kong is complicated. The relationship between HKPF and mainland interests is layered. Chou has connections I can't fully map from this side of the Pacific. Be careful about who knows you're there. Are we being watched? I don't know, Torres said. And coming from Torres, who usually had at least a qualified answer, that was not a comfortable thing to hear. Probably. I hung up and looked at the harbor. A dozen container ships moved on the dark water, their running lights making slow constellations below the city's permanent electric blaze. Sarah came out of the bathroom with her hair still wet from the shower, looked at my face, and said, How complicated? Complicated. I said, Torres says the political situation is layered. Torres says a lot with very few words, she said. Yes, I said, he does. Inspector Vivian Lowe met us the next morning at a Dai Pai Dong near the Central Market, an open-air street food stall, doing brisk business in kanji and cha-chan ting coffee, despite the October chill coming off the harbor. She was younger than I'd expected from Torres's description, early 30s. Compact, wearing a plain charcoal blazer over dark slacks, with a particular stillness of someone who had learned very early that being underestimated was a professional advantage. She ordered in Cantonese without looking at the menu. She spoke English to us with the slight British cadence that Hong Kong's education system had been leaving on certain generations of professionals since the handover, and with the precision of someone who had chosen every word carefully before she said it. Raymond Chou, she said, once we had coffee in front of us. I've been watching Lantau Bioventures for 4 months. Financial irregularities in the parent structure, payments to entities I couldn't identify, property transactions that didn't make commercial sense. But Dr. Chou is, she paused and looked at her coffee, connected. He has relationships in the academic community, in government advisory circles. Moving against him without solid domestic predicate would create problems that would slow us down considerably. What does solid predicate look like? Sarah asked. Documentation that Lantau Bioventures is conducting or facilitating unauthorized human experimentation. Lowe said, we have circumstantial financial ties to offshore entities. We do not yet have evidence of what those entities are for. She looked at us, which I understand you can provide. We can provide the full Chrysalis operational picture, I said, named entities, shell company architecture, facility documentation from Seoul, Tokyo, Manila, Singapore, research protocols, survivor testimony, and documentation that uses identical terminology to research filings associated with Lanhao Bioventures. Lo was quiet for a moment. Around us the street stall noise continued. The clink of bowls, rapid Cantonese, the hiss of something going into a wok somewhere behind us. Dr. Chou himself, she said finally, I need to understand what kind of person I am dealing with. In my experience, the approach matters enormously. A man who is coerced responds to one strategy. A man who believes what he's doing is right responds to a completely different one. He's a true believer, I said. He thinks the research is valid. He thinks the ends justify the means. I paused. In my experience, true believers are the hardest to move because you can't offer them a way out. They don't think they need one. But they can be moved if you can show them that the thing they believe in has been used to harm people who did not consent to be harmed in ways that the science does not require. Lo looked at me steadily. You've done this before. Dr. Eleanor Voss, Sarah said quietly. In Manila, she was a true believer too. It takes longer. But it works if you approach it right. Lo nodded slowly. 36 hours, she said. Give me 36 hours with the documentation you're carrying, and I can build a domestic predicate for a formal interview request. Not a raid, an interview. Dr. Chou is the kind of man who will respond to a formal request better than a door broken down at 3 a.m. It respects his standing. He will come. We don't know if we have 36 hours before he activates a directive, I said. No, Lo agreed. We do not, but we also do not know that he is actively preparing to activate it now. If Pemberton is in custody and his digital access is severed, Cho may be waiting for information about what has happened to the network before he acts. She looked at both of us. Men like Cho do not act on uncertainty. He is a scientist. He will want to know the situation before he makes a decision that cannot be undone. Sarah looked at me, the same thought arriving simultaneously. She was right. 36 hours, I said. We'll need to be in the room when you interview him. Lo regarded me with the measured skepticism of a professional who did not typically bring foreign private investigators to formal police interviews. Then she regarded Sarah. Mrs. Murray speaks Korean, Lo said. Does she speak Cantonese? Mandarin, Sarah said, and enough Cantonese to follow a conversation. Lo almost smiled. That may be useful, she said, in an advisory capacity. The 36 hours were not quiet. Miles called 8 hours in with an update that changed the shape of things. He'd been running passive surveillance on the network communication channels. He'd mapped from the Manila documents, and something had shifted. A message had gone through one of the monitored relay addresses. Not from Pemberton, whose access was dark, but from someone inside the network who knew Pemberton was compromised. The message had 3 words. In Chinese characters that Miles had run through translation. Prepare for departure. Departure of what? I said. Unknown, Miles said, but it went to 2 recipients. One is an address I can't trace yet. The other resolves to a server registered to a company in the new territories. He paused. Frank, I think someone inside the Chrysalis structure is trying to execute a partial network shutdown independent of Pemberton. Someone who decided not to wait for his authorization. Dr. Cho, I said. Possibly. Or someone who reports to Cho. A pause. If they execute a partial shutdown without the full 2-party directive authorization, it's different. It's a destruction of evidence and potentially an attempt to move or relocate subjects, rather than the worst-case scenario. But it's still bad. Subjects, I said. How many? The Lanhao Bioventures documentation Lo shared with us this afternoon indicates an active research program. Based on facility specifications and the supply orders I've been cross-referencing, I'd estimate 8 to 12. He paused. Frank, they can't just disappear 12 people from a Hong Kong facility, but they can move them. And if they move them to somewhere without the cooperation architecture, we've built in Japan and Singapore and Manila. We lose them, I said. For a while, Miles said, until we find them again, which we will. But while we're finding them, those people are in the program, I said. Yes. I called Lo. She picked up in 2 rings, which told me she was awake, which at 2 a.m. told me she had been expecting the call. We need to move faster, I said. A brief pause. How much faster? Tonight. Another pause, longer. That changes the approach. I know, I said, but Cho is about to make a decision. If he moves subjects out of the facility before we reach him, we lose ground we've spent weeks building. Mr. Murray, Lo said carefully, if I move tonight without the full predicate I've been building, I take on considerable institutional risk. Yes, I said, you do. There was a silence, the kind of silence that contains a decision being made. Get dressed, Lo said. Meet me at the address I'll send you in 40 minutes. Dr. Raymond Chou lived in a flat in mid-levels, the residential band that clings to the slope of Victoria Peak above the city's commercial district. The kind of address that's at a certain level of academic achievement and professional standing, not the extravagance of a man who thought he was untouchable, but the quiet confidence of a man who had spent 61 years being right about things. Lo arrived with 2 officers from Commercial Crime Bureau, and the particular expression of someone who had made a decision and was committed to it entirely. She knocked on the door at 3:15 a.m. Dr. Raymond Chou answered in a dressing gown. He was smaller than I'd imagined from the file photograph. Compact, gray-haired, wearing reading glasses that he hadn't taken off, which meant he'd been awake and working when we knocked. He looked at Lo's identification, then at us standing behind her, and his expression did something careful and controlled that was not quite fear and not quite surprise. It was recognition. He knew who we were. Not our names, perhaps not our faces, but he knew what our presence meant, and the speed with which that recognition moved across his face and was replaced by the measured composure of scientists confronting an unexpected result told me that Lo's read had been right. This was not a man who panicked. This was a man who processed. Dr. Cho, Lo said, I am Inspector Vivian Lo of the Hong Kong Police Force Commercial Crime Bureau. I'm here regarding Lantau Bioventures and its connection to research activities that are under investigation in multiple jurisdictions. I would like to speak with you. He looked at her for a moment, then he opened the door wider. Please come in, he said. His flat was books and journals and a desk that faced a window, and on the desk there was a laptop open and a cup of tea gone cold and the printed documentation that told me, without any further investigation required, that Miles had been right. He had been awake. He had been deciding. He sat in the chair at his desk. We arranged ourselves opposite him, Lo in the position of authority, Sarah and I in the positions of people who were present for a reason he would understand. You have come from Manila, he said. Not a question. Hong Kong via Manila. I said, Singapore before that. Tokyo. Seoul. He absorbed this with the stillness of a man processing a sequence of setbacks. The network, he said. How much? All of it, I said. Seoul, Fujisawa, the Pacific Meridian, Manila, all of it shut down, evidence secured, subject recovered, Pemberton in custody, 3 extradition warrants, his personal signature on criminal directives in 3 jurisdictions. Cho looked at his desk, at the open laptop, at the cold tea. The directive, he said. That's why we're here, Lo said. He was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the city hummed in its nocturnal register, the never-quite silent sound of a place that couldn't fully stop even at 3 a.m. Dr. Cho, Sarah said. She had the particular tone she used when she was going to say something true and difficult to a person who needed to hear it. I'd heard it in Seoul, in Fujisawa, in Manila with Dr. Voss. The subjects in the facility below us, 8 to 12 people, based on what we know of the operational scale here. They enrolled because they were told they were participating in longevity research. They signed consent forms for something that doesn't resemble what was actually done to them. They trust that the people overseeing their care have their interests in mind. Cho looked at her. The science may have been real to you, Sarah continued. I understand that it was. The work was genuine. The methodology was yours. the results you were building toward. From your perspective, those results would have justified the approach. I understand that this is what you believe." She paused. "But the people in that facility are not abstractions. They are specific people with names and families and lives outside this building, and they did not give real consent to what is being done to them, and whatever the science delivers, that is true." The silence that followed was different from the silences before it. "I know their names," Chou said quietly. "I know all of them." "Then act accordingly," Sarah said. He looked at his laptop for another long moment. Then he closed it. "I will not activate the directive," he said. "I've been sitting here for 4 hours deciding whether to, and I will not." He looked at Lo. "I will cooperate fully with your investigation. I will provide access to the facility and its documentation. I will provide everything I have on the Chrysalis architecture at this level of the network." He paused. "And I want to be in the room when the subjects are told what has happened. I owe them that." Lo looked at him for a long, measured moment. "Arrangements can be made," she said. The Lantau BioVentures research facility was not in the new territories building that appeared in the company filings. It was 3 floors below a medical services company in Kowloon Bay, accessible through a service corridor that Dr. Chou led us to without hesitation at 4:30 in the morning, Lo's team following behind. 9 subjects. Not 8, not 12. 9. 7 women, 2 men, all Hong Kong residents. Ages ranging from 27 to 44. All enrolled, as a pattern held, under a longitudinal wellness optimization study with substantial financial compensation and a consent form that described a program they had never actually been in. They were disoriented when we came in. It was 4:30 in the morning, and people in the middle of a research protocol are not used to being woken by police and told the situation has changed. But they were, in the clinical sense, intact. Whatever the directive would have done to them had not been done. We had been in time. Again, I thought about that word. Again, and what it was costing keep earning it. The kilometers behind us. The nights without full sleep. The weight of what we'd found in each city, and the weight of knowing there were cities still ahead. Sarah was speaking to one of the subjects, a woman in her 30s who had a child's drawing pinned above her bed in the facility. The kind of thing you bring when you think you're going to be somewhere for a while. Sarah was speaking to her quietly, steadily, the way she always did, and the woman was listening with the particular focus of someone who is trying to determine whether the ground has actually stopped moving. Dr. Chou stood apart, watching, true to his word, present, as he had promised to be. I didn't feel sorry for him. I also didn't feel nothing. He had believed in the science, and the science had cost 9 people a chapter of their lives they had not agreed to give. That was the arithmetic. But he had chosen not to activate the directive when the choice was in his hands, and that was also true, and the world was complicated in that specific way that made this job harder and more human than I sometimes wanted it to be. Lo called us at 7 a.m., after the subject had been transferred to Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Kowloon Bay, and Dr. Chou had been formally processed. "His cooperation is comprehensive," she said. "He has provided the full Chrysalis documentation for the Hong Kong operation, including communications that fill several gaps in the network architecture your team has been mapping. He has also provided, and this is significant, the structural details of the directive authorization system." "Which means we can disable it," I said. "Which means," Lo said carefully, "that the technical team can assess whether disabling it is possible and advise the relevant jurisdictions accordingly. I'm a police inspector, not a cryptographer." She paused. "But yes, I believe so." I called Miles. "Already on it," he said, before I'd gotten past his name. "Lo's team sent me the authorization architecture documentation 20 minutes ago. Frank, this is significant. The directive requires a 2-party activation and a 24-hour countdown before it executes. That means it can also be interrupted up to 24 hours after activation begins. Chow's key can be revoked. And without Pemberton's access, which has been dark since Korea, even if someone else in the network tries to activate the other half, they can't complete the sequence. The directive is neutralized," I said. "For now," Miles said, "until someone rebuilds the authorization chain with new keys, which would require Pemberton to be free and operational, or someone very close to his technical infrastructure to step into his role. A pause, which is why the legal case still matters. The faster the trial, the smaller the window for the network to reconstitute itself. Torres, I said. Call Torres. Already sent him the summary. Miles said. He replied in 40 seconds, which for Torres is the equivalent of running down a hallway. He read me the reply. Understood. Accelerating. 2 words. Torres at maximum velocity. We stood on the Star Ferry crossing Victoria Harbour back to Hong Kong Island at 8:30 in the morning. The city blazing at full power in the October sun. The water green-gray and busy with everything that moves through one of the world's great ports. Sarah had her coffee. I had mine. The ferry smelled of diesel and salt and the particular morning quality of a place that has been doing the same necessary thing for over 100 years and intends to keep doing it. 9, Sarah said. 9, I said, plus the ones in Manila we were too late for, before the protocols kicked in. Yes, and the directive is neutralized. For now. She was quiet for a moment, watching the island approach, the towers rising in their vertical ambition from the waterfront. It's different now, she said, from Seoul, from Tokyo, even from Manila. The directive, I said, not just that. She turned to look at me. Across 6 cities, we built a record that a prosecutor couldn't dismantle if she tried. Survivors, cooperating witnesses, financial documentation, his signature on authorizations in 3 jurisdictions, and now the technical architecture of the worst thing he built, sitting in Lowe's case files. She paused. It's not just that the net is tightening. The net is already tight. We're carrying the weight of it. There's still Zurich, I said, London, and whatever we don't know yet. I know, she said, but I wanted to say it, because we don't say it enough. We find the next thing, and we go. We don't stop to. She stopped. Acknowledge what we've done, I said. Yes, she said. The ferry docked. The city absorbed us again the way cities do. Torres called while we were walking up from the pier. Hong Kong, he said. Hong Kong, I confirmed. 9 subjects recovered. Directive neutralized. Chou cooperating. He let that sit for a moment. Frank, I've been doing this for 22 years, and I want to say something, and I want you to actually hear it. Okay, I said. This case is the most complex cross-jurisdictional organized crime investigation I have been part of, and the reason it hasn't collapsed under its own weight is the work you and Sarah have done in 6 cities, and he paused. 8 weeks. Another pause. 6 cities. 46 people recovered. 1 directive neutralized. 1 network that cannot reconstitute itself without a man who is going to spend the rest of his life inside a courtroom. He stopped. I am cautiously optimistic. For Torres, that was a standing ovation. Zurich next, I said. Zurich next, he confirmed. Rest first. Both of you. That's an order. If you're inclined to follow orders. Duly noted, I said. He hung up. Sarah had heard. She looked at me with the expression she had when she was deciding whether to smile. Duly noted, she said. I mean it this time, I said. 6 hours of actual sleep before we think about Zurich. 6 hours, she said. And then Portugal. After Zurich. I said, after Zurich and London. She said, after this. I said, I mean it. She looked at me with the 40% believing expression. I had been working on getting that to 60. We walked up from the ferry pier into the mid-morning noise and heat of Hong Kong, and the harbor was behind us, and the case was in front of us, and somewhere across the world in a Korean holding facility and a courtroom, and a set of legal proceedings that were finally moving with the weight of 6 cities' worth of evidence. Richard Pemberton was running out a road. Not yet at the end of it, but running out. 16 years in this business. And the one thing I've learned is that the truth doesn't find people. People find the truth, but only if someone keeps looking. If these cases matter to you the way they matter to me, hit that like button. Subscribe, ring the bell, because the next case is already out there, waiting to be solved. New Delhi coming. The Endgame Directive is real, and we are not stopping. I'm Frank Murray. I don't quit, neither should you.